Hound of the Baskervilles from 1959. Lethal Weapon. Vivacious Lady from 1938. We'll discuss these three films today on this installment of Rediscovering Classics. From Swords and Sandals to Lightsabers and Death Stars, this is Rediscovering Classics. As always, I'm your host, Roger Dodger. And we'll start, as always, with our first segment, Rediscovering Classics. This week for Rediscovering Classics, I decided to rewatch The Hound of the Baskervilles. 1959 film produced by Hammer Studios, teaming up the ever-so-popular pairing of Terence Fisher in the directing chair, music by James Bernard, and leads Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. Although unlike other many Hammer films, Lee in this film plays the role of a protagonist alongside Cushing, and this film very much has the same feel to The Horror of Dracula, as it was released here in the US, and The Curse of Frankenstein, which were released a couple years prior to this film. It had the same signature style, the gothic setting, the mild gore that came as a staple from these films. I really like this film. It is one of my favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptations. Lee and Cushing, of course, play very well off of each other, based off of the novel by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This was one of the more popular Sherlock Holmes stories at the time. It had been adapted once before in the 30s by Basil Rathbone, a veteran Holmes player. What I like about this one is it does get very dark. It shows you the nitty-gritty. It shows you how almost standoffish Sherlock Holmes can be. While he's very charismatic, he's also very much here to do a thing. He's here to solve a mystery. He's here to figure out what is going on in this town. But of course, Sherlock Holmes would not be Sherlock Holmes without the help of Dr. Watson, played in this film by Andre Morel. He adds a very nice layer to Dr. Watson. Watson is always very smart. In some of the earlier Holmes adaptations, Watson can be seen as less intelligent or slightly more bumbling than Holmes is, and in this he is played very much as a fellow colleague and not so much as a bumbling add-on. Cinematography was done by Jack Asher, and it does great. It plays with the shadows just like you want it to. The use of fog, the use of dark, the use of light, all really play well with this film. It is bright when it needs to be bright, and it's dark when it needs to be dark. Cushing would, of course, go on from this to portray Holmes 10 years down the line for the BBC. He starred in 12 episodes, I do believe, of the BBC Cases of Sherlock Holmes, in which they again adapted Hound of the Baskervilles, so of course I would encourage you to seek that out to compare the two versions. Christopher Lee plays Sir Henry Baskerville, the gentleman who calls upon Holmes for his assistance. And while this is not 100% a faithful adaptation to the story it is based upon, it is still a great adaptation, and what the story adds here, you can tell, is very much the Hammer signature that is being added. So I would definitely say check this film out if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, if you're a Hammer films fan, or if you are a fan of Peter Cushing and or Christopher Lee. Coming up, we have Lethal Weapon and Vivacious Lady, next on Rediscovering Classics. Welcome back to Rediscovering Classics. Up next for our Discovering Classics segment this week, I rewatched the film Lethal Weapon, 1986 film starring Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, directed by Richard Donner. And this is another film that I recalled enjoying immensely And after this rewatch, I can say that it is definitely high up on my list of action films. And the thing I love about it is in the 80s, you had all kinds of action heroes. You had Stallone and Cobra in Rocky and Rambo, and you had Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando and Raw Deal. But this film, I feel, really helped revitalize the police cop genre. And one thing I enjoy about this film is something I also enjoy about Rambo, and that is that these characters have layers. This is not your standard good guy versus bad guy fare. Martin Riggs, portrayed by Mel Gibson, is a tortured, suicidal man who is staying alive primarily because he knows that he does good as a police officer. And Danny Glover is the person assigned to work with him, and he is just trying to do the best he can. He's been on the force a while, and he feels almost saddled by this guy because he is so tortured, and he does see him as unstable. The two play off of each other really well with comedic timing, and while their relationship is almost antagonistic at first, they really start to warm up to each other towards the midpoint of the movie, which is good because that is when Gary Busey as Mr. Joshua and his employer show up to really start wreaking havoc on the two. Gunfights in open streets and classic 80s humor both lend well to the script by Shane Black, who's always had a knack for writing these action features, and it was directed by Richard Donner, who of course is no stranger to action pieces, having previously directed Superman and Superman 2. Overall, this is a very fun 80s buddy cop film that, like I said, really revitalized the genre, because after this you were able to get your various other buddy cop films, and that is something that trickled very much into the 90s and died off towards the end of the 90s. But for me, this feels very much like a 90s action film. If you were to watch this and you were to watch The Rock with Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage, you would get the same kind of feeling of those. Another film around this time that I feel did great with this almost buddy cop formula was Midnight Run with Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin. With this, I really love the action. I love the three-dimensional characters. I love that there are stakes throughout this for both men, because towards the climax of the film, both men are fighting for something, rather it be personal or physical. And that is something else that I really, really love about this film. Coming up, we have Vivacious Lady from 1938. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back to Rediscovering Classics. Our final film of the evening in our Discovering Classics banner is the 1938 film Vivacious Lady, starring Jimmy Stewart and Ginger Rogers. Vivacious Lady is based off of a short story from 1936, was produced by George Stevens, and starred Jimmy Stewart and Ginger Rogers. So, this film was something that popped up in my suggestions over on HBO Max, not a sponsor. And I love both of the leads. They're two fantastic actors from the time. And so I gave it a watch, and honestly, I can say that I was underwhelmed. because it felt like this movie was just moving from one situation to a very similar situation, and it felt at times like the entire movie was a long running joke. The two leads in this film, Ginger Rogers and Jimmy Stewart playing Professor Peter Morgan, who's trying to prove himself to his father, who is the president of the university he is employed at. And Ginger Rogers plays Francie Morgan, who starts out as a nightclub singer and goes home with Jimmy Stewart upon his return from retrieving his cousin. And from there, like I said, it's just, oh, I'm going to tell my parents we're married. Oh, not yet, though, because this is going on. Oh, well, now I'm going to do it. Oh, but not right now because this set piece is going on. And it just felt like the story could have been told in an hour, and everything else just kind of felt like filler and felt like recurring gags, which I expect if I'm watching certain films of this time, but not when I'm watching something that's trying to be more elevated than that. And honestly, of the two leads, I can give you probably 5 better movies to watch with Jimmy Stewart if you'd like an introduction into his work. And I can definitely give you 5 better Ginger Rogers films if her work's something you're wanting to get into. But overall, I just felt like this film was lacking character and plot and substance. And so overall, I would say if you want to watch a great Jimmy Stewart movie, go watch Made for Each Other. If you want to go watch a good Ginger Rogers movie, go watch The Major and the Minor. But if you want a good movie with either of those two leads, do not start with Vivacious Lady. I feel you will be bored, and before you know it, you're just scrolling through your phone because these are playing out kind of like TikTok Reels anyways. That's all I have for you this week on Rediscovering Classics. As always, please remember to comment stuff. If you like the video, stuff you'd like me to change. This is still very early on in the channel, so I'm always looking for suggestions. If you guys want me to go deeper into these films, I definitely can. I just like to try to avoid spoilers because I do want this to be something for somebody to go listen to for a recommendation versus outright plot synopsis of the films. And definitely drop comments for films you'd like to see me review in my Discovering Classics segment, because that is for you guys. That is me wanting to hear your voice and, have you guys give me recommendations so I can check them out. Please remember, if you like the video, to like, subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell, because as we classic film fans know, every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. Thank you for spending time with me today. It's your host, Roger Dodger, signing off. Until next time, remember, grab your popcorn, grab your milk duds, and rediscover something classic.